Decision 2012 coverage continues with First Person. Senator Tom Carper is here on First. Welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Mark.
So if there were just 30 seconds left here in the campaign and John or Jill Delaware is heading to into the voting booth, what's your final 30-second pitch before they decide who to pick for U.S. Senate? Why should they pick you?
Well, first, I would just say there are already plenty of bomb throwers in Washington, D.C. I don't think we need any more. What we need are bridge builders. That's what I do. I work with Democrats and with Republicans to get things done. The kind of things that we need to get done in the months to come are putting in place a Bowles-Simpson-like real comprehensive deficit reduction plan with a lot of savings on the spending side, some revenues too. Second thing is to keep this economic recovery moving by investing in workforce, people that are working for us, investing in their skills, by investing in our infrastructure, transportation, roads, highways, bridges, all the above, and also by investing in research and development that can be turned into technologies that will create products, things that we can serve all over the world, stuff made, stamped in Delaware, made in America. And the last thing I would do is there's so many provisions in the healthcare law that will enable us to get better healthcare results for less money. We need to implement it to do those. So I can do those things, and given the opportunity, that's what I'll focus on. You
mentioned the deficit. Let's get into that a little bit. The fiscal cliff in unfortunately too close of the near future, where the federal government won't be able to do what it needs to do because it'll run out of money. Where do you stand on cuts versus tax increases, revenue increases, and the need for a compromise between the two?
A lot of people forget, gosh, 11 years ago we had balanced budgets. We had them in 98, 99, 2000, and 2001. The person who worked with Republicans and Democrats in the Congress to create that was Erskine Bowles, Chief of Staff to former President Bill Clinton. And when Clinton left office, we had balanced budgets, surpluses for as far as the eye could see. And we went off a cliff. We went off a cliff then, and went off a cliff for about the next 8 years. And for the last 4 years, we've been trying to dig out of it. This president invited Erskine Bowles back in the game. Said, Erskine, we need you to work your magic again, as you did in 1997. And Erskine said, give me a good Republican to work with. And Alan Simpson was brought in. Alan Simpson, former Republican senator from Wyoming, and the two of them led a deficit commission for about 8 months, 2 years ago. They came up with a deficit reduction plan that reduces the deficit by anywhere from $4 to $5 trillion over 10 years. It's a grand compromise, if you will. $3 on the spending side, everything on the table. $1 on the revenue side, not by raising rates, but actually by lowering rates and expanding the tax base of income that is taxable. The grand compromise, Democrats agree to compromise on entitlement reform. Republicans agree to compromise on tax reform that doesn't raise rates, actually lowers rates, but actually broadens the base and creates revenues. $1 of revenue for every $3 of spending. That's the best idea out there. Half the U.S. Senate support it, half 25 Democrats, 25 Republicans. I will push very hard for that and have been pushing very hard for the last 2 years. My hope is the president, whoever is president, I hope it's Barack Obama after this, but whoever is president, I hope that president will embrace that kind of approach, provide strong leadership. That's what's been missing.
Is there coming a point in the future where the federal government will need to, will be forced to spend less here in states like Delaware, and the state government will have to pick up more? Is there a need to reduce federal spending in the states?
Well, actually what we need to do is to look at every part. This is what I do. I get to chair a subcommittee called Federal Financial Management. It's part of the Homeland Security Government Affairs Committee. If I'm reelected, I'll have an opportunity to be chairman to succeed Joe Lieberman as the chairman of the Homeland Security Government Affairs Committee, if the Democrats are still in majority. And what I do, I work with the GAO, Government Accountability Office, work with OMB, Office of Management and Budget, work with the Inspector Generals throughout federal government, work with nonprofit groups like Taxpayers Against Government Waste. And what we do is we look in every nook and cranny of the federal government, transportation, defense, housing, education, you name it. It's fit to Medicare, Medicaid, and figure out how do we get better results for less money. Better results for less money. In everything we do, we need to make what I call almost a change in culture, from a culture of spendthrift to a culture of thrift. I was state treasurer when we had the worst credit rating in the country. We had no cash management system, nobody would lend us any money. And we had the highest marginal personal income tax rate in the country. And we ended up with a AA credit rating. Pete DuPont did a great job as governor then. We had some great people in the legislature. For governor, I was governor for 8 years. We actually balanced our budget for 8 years in a row, cut taxes 7 years in a row, got a AAA credit rating. And I think during that 8 years period of time, some 70,000 new jobs were created, not by me, but by the nurturing environment that we created in Delaware for jobs.
The presidential campaign has sort of set a tone of differences between President Obama and Mitt Romney. Do you think this campaign in Delaware's Senate seat is about a difference between you and your opponents and sort of the different ways you each would be as senator, or is it more sort of a referendum on the job you've done over the last 12 years?
I think it's all the above. I said earlier, we don't need more bomb throwers in Washington, D.C. There are plenty of those on both sides of the aisle. What we need are people who are able to work with both sides to get things done. Work with, whether it's a Democratic president or a Republican president. I've been able to do that. I'm proud what we've accomplished, what I've been able to be a part of. I know how the place works. Again, if I'm reelected, and the Democrats are majority, I chair the Homeland Security and Government Affairs Committee, put me in a position of real leadership. And I have the ability to get along with people on both sides. I think the thing that's missing in Washington, as much as anything, is trusting relationships. And I'm blessed to have those kinds of relationships with most of I think all the Democrats, maybe most of the Republicans.
A few weeks ago, one of your opponents was here, Alex Pires, and he's made an issue out of your health and how good of a
Dr. Pires? Is it Dr. Pires?
Senate candidate.
Or is this the guy that's a trial lawyer who runs bars and restaurants and bars and nightclubs in Dewey Beach? Is that the guy?
I believe that's
Dr. Pires?
How would you respond to his?
It's hogwash. It's laughable. I'll just tell you a quick story. I had been a Navy ROTC midshipman at Ohio State. Graduated and went off to Pensacola to become a naval flight officer. And before they ever put us in an airplane, they put us through a really rigorous physical conditioning regimen. I left Pensacola, I was 22, heading for California and Southeast Asia. I was in great shape. And I said to myself, I'm going to stay in this kind of shape for the rest of my life, as long as I can. And for as long as I can remember, I have exercised 6, 7 days a week. And Martha and I got married kind of later in life, like midlife. I was almost 40, she was mid-30s. Looked about 20, but she was in her mid-30s. And we had our boys when I was in my early 40s, she was late 30s. And I just said, I want to be able to play sports with my boys. I want to be an active dad. I want to be able to do all kinds of things with my boys. And you know what we do? Christopher, 24-year-old, he's a triathlete. When he comes home, we run together. We ran the Caesar Riding Half Marathon together last year. A month from now, we're going to run the Thanksgiving 10K for MS. Ben comes home, he's our 22-year-old nationally certified physical fitness trainer. And Ben and I go lift weights together. I mean, like, this is my life. This is my life. I haven't missed a day's work in over 30 years. And I think it's because of this regimen that I maintain. I'm passionate about it. The other thing, there's a great book out, I don't know if you've seen it, you might want to get one of these in about 30 years, but it's called Younger Next Year. And whenever a friend of mine is about to turn 60, I buy a copy, paperback, autograph it, and send it to him. And the 3 rules in Younger Next Year, for being younger next year, even if you're 60 or 70 or whatever, your rules are exercise vigorously 6 days a week for the rest of your life. I do that. Second, don't eat crap. I eat really healthy food. And third, find things to be passionate about and remain passionate about for the rest of your life. And I'm passionate about a lot of things. So those are my rules. And I would say the guy who's making, Dr. Pires, the guy who's making these claims, also, I think he's the same guy that said that Delaware is the most corrupt state in America. And so I would just ask the people to take what he says with a grain of salt. But don't eat too much salt, because it may not be good for you.
Is that a legitimate issue to bring up in a campaign? Or
what we really should focus on, it's nonsense. It's just baloney. What we should focus on, how about the health of the economy? How about the health of our fiscal health? How about healthcare reform in a way that actually moves away from just spending money on people when they're sick to actually spending money on people to help keep them healthy in the first place? Those are the things that people want us to focus on. They want us to figure out how to keep this economy moving, how do we get our budget in the right direction, and how do we take this healthcare law that we've passed and make sure we get better healthcare results for less money, because we need to.
A lot of people have seen you working out at the Y. I know our own Shirley Min has seen you working out at the Y. And a lot of people have seen a video that's gone viral. I guess it was at the behest of Lieutenant Governor Matt Dehn.
Yeah, Matt Dehn, get me in trouble.
To do some push-ups on a table.
He wanted me to do 10 push-ups. I said, no, I don't think that's right, man. I don't want to. He wanted me to do it on the floor at the Felton Fire Hall in front of all these Democratic folks who were going to eat fried oysters and really healthy food and chicken salad and all, dumplings. and he wanted me to do it on a flight. I said, I don't want to do that. And he said, no, this is great. It's a Democratic, this is getting really pumped up, and everybody could show your stuff. And I said, no, I don't think so. John Carney was there, and they kind of encouraged me. So we cleared the top of the head table, and I pumped out 30-some push-ups. I could have done a lot more, actually. But John says he's afraid the table's going to collapse, so we didn't. Anyway, I've had all the stuff I've done as governor, senator, whatever, Navy. I've gotten more feedback from that. Apparently it's been on YouTube, gone viral. We've heard from people all over the country. Great push-ups, glad you could do it. You're not dying, are you?
So back to the election. That was a very sort of entertaining kind of side street for this campaign, which has been, you know, a little bit
bizarre.
This is
bizarre. I've never seen a campaign waged by any person in the years I've been in Delaware this ugly, this really vicious, and. This is not Delaware. We have something in Delaware, we call it the Delaware Way, or we're respectful of each other. Democrats and Republicans work together. When the elections are over, they're over. And this is kind of behavior we just haven't seen here. I don't think it'll be well rewarded by the people.
Do you think the Senate, U.S. Senate will remain Democratic?
I think the election were held today, it would. If the election were held a year ago, it would not have been. And we got basically a little more than 3 weeks to go. And so just never take anything for granted. I learned this from my friend Mike Castle, who said to me more than a few times in the last years, don't ever take anything for granted. And I always run like I'm 30 points behind, and we're still doing it, and we'll continue to do that, and take nothing for granted. Sort
of a lesson you learned from what happened to Congressman Castle?
Sure, there you go. And in that case, that was in a primary opposed by people say a very unusual candidate as well, and actually a vicious campaign against him, very personal, and said awful things about him. It's kind of a whisper campaign, untrue, unfounded. And but in a primary, not a lot of people turned out, and in a very small turnout, he lost to someone that in a general election would never have beaten him.
A couple of the issues that you've been focused on here in Delaware, a national park. Is that something that's going to get done this year? If not, do we have to sort of start all over again?
I think we've laid the groundwork. Legislation introduced, House, Senate, hearings, House, Senate, report out of committee. There's broad support for it in the Senate. The ranking Republican, Lisa Murkowski, close friend, Jeff Bingaman, chairman of the Energy Committee, are both strong supporters of this. President, Secretary of the Interior are all supportive of it. I mean, like, it's teed up to go through. John Carney's pushing real hard in the House. The reason why I'm so passionate about this is, well, first, there are 50 states, 49 have national parks. We don't. We have plenty to be proud of. And we're the first state where the Swedes and Finns came ashore. The Old Swedes Church here in Wilmington, of all the churches in America, that's the one that's been longest service, continuing in a very church in America. William Penn came to America through Old Newcastle to bring the plans for Delaware and for Pennsylvania. The Constitution was ratified in Dover on the green in the Golden Fleece Tavern. Caesar Rodney rode his horse from Dover to Philadelphia to cast a tie-breaking vote for the Declaration of Independence. Just south of where the Dover Air Force Base is today, John Dickinson grew up. He was the sort of the pen man of the Revolution. He wrote a lot of the early writings that incited and inspired people to rise up against King George. Lewis, Delaware. I think maybe the oldest house, one of the oldest houses in all of America, is in Lewis, Delaware. And about 375 years ago, one of the first colonial Dutch settlements was in Lewis. I mean, there's a whole lot here in this state to be proud of and excited about. And we have this woodlawn property, 1,000 acres on the border of Delaware and Pennsylvania, which some wonderful people have decided that they would like to preserve forever as open space, which would be great, and make that part of our national park system. This could be a great thing for Delaware. Last thing I'd say on this, as you can tell I'm excited about it. The last thing I'd say is the top tourist destination in this country for people who come here from other nations are national parks. That's the thing that they most want to see. And when you go to the National Park website and you're looking from A to W, Alabama to Wyoming, they don't find much in the D's, Delaware, because we don't have one. And tourism is a big part of our economy, tourism, agriculture, manufacturing, biosciences, and so forth. And I want us to continue to build our tourist economy, and this is a great way to do it.
Another issue you've really been beating the drum on is saving the Postal Service. Mm-hmm. Is that something that's going to get done? Because it seems like it just keeps, there's not been any real response. We don't really hear a lot about it from a lot of other people. Yeah,
behind the scenes negotiations are now taking place between the senators. We passed a bipartisan bill, gets the Postal Service back on the right track. Not a perfect bill, but actually quite a good one. Right sizes the Postal Service, reduces to some extent their network of 33,000 post offices. It It reduces by about a quarter, a third, the number of mail processing centers, not Harris Corner, but mail processing centers across the country. And also, it uses, Postal Service is overpaid by about $11 or $12 billion, money they owe to the federal employee retirement system. It's an overpayment. Everybody says it's been an overpayment. They ought to get a refund. And what they would like to do is use that refund to help pay down their debt, Post Office's debt to the Treasury, and they'd like to use $2 or $3 billion of it to be able to offer bonuses to postal employees that are eligible to retire. And they're waiting like the auto employees were waiting till 3 years ago. They're looking for a bonus to incentivize them to retire. We want to incentivize about 100,000 of them to retire. So if we do all that, we will right-size the Postal Service in terms of their distribution network, post offices, their mail processing centers, and also with respect to their employees. That's what we need to do, just like the auto industry did. And look at them, they're back to profitability. The Postal Service can come back nicely as well.
Confident that'll get done?
Mm-hmm. I am.
You've been in public service a long time. You mentioned your time as state treasurer many years ago and 2 terms in the state senate, trying for your 3rd. Is there a time you look down the road in the future where you think, you know, getting through this election, and if you are elected at the end of this term, at the end of this next term, after that another term, that it'll be time to sort of ride off into the sunset, or do you want to be a senator for life?
I don't want to be like Robert Byrd. He wanted to die in the Senate.
Right.
Claude Pepper, he wanted to die in the House. I don't want to do that. I think I still have a lot left in the tank. I drive a Chrysler Town and Country minivan, same one 2001 since for 11 years since I stepped down as governor. It has the original engine, original transmission, and the original owner. I like to say it's built to last. I think I am too. But eventually, I spent 23 years of my life as a naval flight officer, and I did some of that while I was treasurer, congressman, running up to governor. That's been a big part of my life. All my life I've been about service, serving our country in uniform, and serving us here in this state as our treasurer, congressman, governor, and senator. I had a chance to lead the National Governors Association. I love doing all that stuff. And I'd like to have a chance to make sure that in the coming months, the coming years, we focus on these 3 things. Get our fiscal house in order. Show that we can govern, show that we can be fiscally responsible, put in place a tax code that actually incentivizes growth and so forth. Number 2, do the things that we need to do to grow this economy. Invest in workforce, invest in our infrastructure, transportation and otherwise, and to invest in R&D that can be commercialized and turn into products that we can sell. Beat down these export barriers for around the world. We're doing a pretty good job of that, do more of that. And eventually, you know what I'd really love to do? I would really love to, however many years I have left in my life, live the kind of life that Russ Peterson did, who died just a year or 2 ago. And when he stepped down, he's only governor for 1 term, but he went on to do great things with his life. And I'm passionate about kids, a big advocate for mentoring in this state, have been forever, still mentor. And my wife chairs the board for the Boys and Girls Clubs of Delaware, hugely into that, teaches full-time at the University of Delaware as well, used to work for DuPont. And what I would like to do is just to spend whatever remaining years of life that I have just doing good work with my life, and with a real focus on making sure that we don't lose this generation, particularly boys. I'm fearful of what's going to happen to boys, so I want to make sure that the kind of stuff we've done through Boys and Girls Clubs and mentoring, that we just build on that in Delaware, maybe even outside of Delaware.
All right, Senator Tom Carper, we appreciate your time. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.